Before we get to our sleepers here, reminder, we are giving a free copy of our draft guide away to one person who subscribes to our new YouTube channel at Deep Fantasy Football Fellas. Comments below on this video on that channel. For the rest of July, for the rest of the summer, let's make it. One person who comments and subscribes to our new channel, we're giving away a copy of our Fantasy Football Fellas draft guide. So make sure you do that at the Fantasy Football Fellas. But we have 12 sleepers here, fellas, that are going after round 10 in fantasy football drafts this year. So if you're in a home league, you don't really change your settings. These are the guys who you're looking at in the final 2 rounds of your draft. I'm starting to get into more leagues where there's some deeper rosters. You're looking at 14, 15, 16 rounds of fantasy drafts. These are some of the guys you should be looking at as more later sleepers in your draft. So we're going to go through at each position. We got 12 total. We're going to cover 3 players at each position, and we're going to start at the running back position. So Cameron, I'll have you start us off here. Who is your running back sleeper that you're choosing?
I'm starting with the new guy in Green Bay. Yes, Mr. Marshawn Lloyd. I know Josh Jacobs is new as well, but obviously not a sleeper. Marshawn Lloyd, the rookie, picked in the 3rd round. We've talked a lot about Josh Jacobs this offseason and just how we're not really in on ADP where he's at. A big part about that is because of how this Green Bay offense has been run under Matt LaFleur. Since Matt LaFleur joined the team in 2019, Aaron Jones only had 1 season with over 215 carries, and that was year 1 with Jamal Williams. I know what you're saying. Oh, Aaron Jones misses a lot of time. I was telling these guys before we started, and I know they were a little surprised. Aaron Jones has missed the same amount of games as Josh Jacobs has since Jacobs entered the league in 2019. So whatever you're saying about Aaron Jones missing time, Josh Jacobs is missing the same amount of games. And you have the same amount of concern there over that time. A.J. Dillon, each of the last 3 seasons, has had 180 carries in each of those 3 years and 35 targets, despite never averaging over 4.3 yards per carry, while Aaron Jones never averaged under 4.6 yards per carry, and twice he averaged over 5. So what I'm trying to say there is Matt LaFleur uses 2 running backs, even if one is wildly inefficient compared to the other one. He uses 2 running backs, even if Aaron Jones was getting the pass work, which Josh Jacobs probably will as well. So there is going to be a role here for Marshawn Lloyd. And guys, I want to ask you, because you're looking at it, there's three players on this 3 running backs on this roster. What are the odds that A.J. Dillon is a Green Bay Packer week 1 to you guys right now?
It's
the odds that slim. The odds that he is a Packer.
Yes,
I'd give it like 25%.
Yeah, that's about where I have it, just because 3rd string running backs on teams don't usually make the team unless they're playing special teams, and A.J. Dillon is just not a special teamer.
I also think you have to look at the Josh Jacobs contract here as well. Like, yes, it's a ton of money. You can look at the 4 years, the actual amount of dollars that he could make throughout this contract. They also gave themselves an out after 1 year, where Josh Jacobs' dead cap is only $9 million next year if they do decide to cut him after this year if he doesn't pan out. So I'm with you. I really do like Marshawn Lloyd as a sleeper. I think I think he does sneaky have some standalone value potential in this offense. That's why I really like him as a sleeper, because if anything happens to Josh Jacobs, I mean, we're throwing him into the top 15 running back conversation immediately. He can handle a bell cow role. But I also think, when Josh Jacobs is on the field, they're going to be looking to give Marshawn Lloyd touches on an every week basis as well. What are your thoughts on how this backfield pans out, Ty?
I honestly think that we're going to see Josh Jacobs get the heavy dose of the early down work, and then we're going to see Marshawn Lloyd mixed in on those 3rd down works, at least for the beginning of the season. And then I wouldn't be surprised, let's say, in a world where Green Bay's offense isn't hitting, full stride by midseason, we could see Marshawn Lloyd hop in a little bit more in that offensive game plan. So I think right away, we're going to see a pretty favorable, workload for Josh Jacobs. But that does not mean that Marshawn Lloyd won't give valuable touches either. And if we are looking between Jacobs and Lloyd, I think all 3 of us would say Lloyd is going to be in the situations for, receptions. Those are pretty valuable. And for a guy like Lloyd, for as late as he's going, there are some guys in that range also that don't necessarily have that same situation to them. So I think, again, like Josh Jacobs, we know money was spent. He has the resume that Marshawn Lloyd does not have. But it's not going to all go to Josh Jacobs. Marshawn Lloyd will be involved just enough to have some value by himself. But also, you could say the argument is that Marshawn Lloyd is probably the more valuable Packer running back to have, just because, again, he's going this much later and he's going to still get valuable touches.
Yeah, I didn't even really touch on how good Marshawn Lloyd is either, right? I was just talking about situation and why I think he can succeed. Marshawn Lloyd is, he's a guy that can hit a home run on any play, right? I mean, he's got great speed, he's got great vision. He's a really good running back. There's a reason the Packers took him with the 3rd round picks too. So I think that also factors into the only reason he's down lower, in this running back 46 is because of Josh Jacobs. So if anything did happen to Jacobs, right, like you said, I mean, he has got great standalone value then.
We're going to talk about a guy next who might have a little bit more standalone value, maybe a little bit more quickly. Ty, you're going to talk about running back in an offense where, there is a little bit more of a clear path to touches. Who's your running back sleeper?
I talked about him last week. It's Rico Dowdle, and it's not super exciting because Rico Dowdle does not have 100 carries to his name in his career so far. But the fact is that this Dallas offense is still projected to be one of the highest scoring units, one of the more efficient units in the entire league. And yes, Zeke is there, who's 28, 29. Mike McCarthy has already come out and said, this is a committee. This is not one player's backfield by any means. But at the same time, we don't know if it is going to be a 60-40 Zeke to Rico Dowdle split. For all we know, it could be 60% to Rico Dowdle, 40% to Zeke. And yes, like Zeke could steal the goal line touches, maybe mix in some receiving work here and there. I honestly don't see why Rico Dowdle doesn't have that same kind of opportunity, that it's not necessarily going to be divided out by like who's going to be the better receiver, who's going to be the better downhill runner. This really is like kind of an interchangeable, running back tandem. So I know Rico Dowdle, again, doesn't have the body of work that you can like rely on or bank on. But the fact is, like with this Dallas offense, for as late as he's going, and again, the opportunity that he has compared to some of the other guys going in his, in this range of drafts, why would you not take a shot on a guy like Rico Dowdle? Again, you're not paying the price for him to be in your lineup every single week. At where he goes, you can probably get him as your running back 4 on your team, and the payoff is massive then.
Like, what if Zeke is just gassed?
Yeah.
Like, what if he's toast? I mean, I think that's such a plausible outcome this year. I know I'm still in on Zeke. I do prefer Zeke to Dowdle, mostly because, I mean, we've seen Zeke do it more recently, even in a backup role to Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, we saw Zeke end of last season. I mean, he was a fantasy beast at the end of last season. That was on the back of a crap ton of receptions, obviously. But I digress. It's a total possibility that 5 weeks in, Zeke just has zero juice left in the tank, so they go to the 26-year-old instead of the 28-year-old. 26-year-old being Rico Dowdle. How do you see the backfield shaking out, Cameron? Because again, it's more clear than a Marshawn Lloyd, Josh Jacobs, and I think this it leaves a lot to be desired. But I think both have an argument to be the 1A in this backfield.
Yeah, what it really comes down to is we got an ambiguous backfield for a team that's probably going to be top 5 in scoring. Okay. I mean, touchdowns are going to have to happen. Someone's going to have to get the touches. And so it's like getting a guy running back, or, the running back 45 is where you're taking Dowdle, that you have a chance at 150 plus touches. And he could fall into the end zone 6 or 7 times just because they need people to fall into the end zone on this team because they're going to be in the red zone so much. So it's just like, you definitely see a path for him. He was the clear backup running back last year to Tony Pollard. Now with Zeke, right? Zeke's not going to take 250 carries this year. Even if Zeke is the one, Zeke is not taking 250 carries this season, which, Dowdle, when you're taking these sleeper guys, you want guys who have path to touches, and Dowdle's is probably the clearest out of any running back in the 40s and beyond, because it's just him and Zeke, and that's it. So I agree. I think it's Zeke as the 1A, but Zeke has got so much tread on those tires. They can't rely on him to take 250 carries this year. They have to even it out a little bit more between the two of them.
And the one last thing I'll admit too, when it comes to Rico Dowdle, like when you were talking about Marshawn Lloyd, I was thinking like if Josh Jacobs goes down with an injury, Marshawn Lloyd can step in and take on the full workload because I think he is that talented versus Rico Dowdle. Like if Zeke goes down, I don't think Rico is just going to take the entire workload. I wouldn't be surprised if they go out and bring somebody else in then for a 1 week, 2 week window for however long Zeke would be out for. So like, it's not the same kind of like bell cow opportunity that like a Marshawn Lloyd could have. But again, like if Rico and Zeke stay healthy throughout the season, there's a way where both of them are benefiting from the fact that it's just those two in the backfield and no one else coming in and helping out.
So the running back I'm going to talk about, I think has the least clear path to touches, yet at the same time, when I say that, I almost wonder if he has the most clear in some ways as well. And I'll explain what I mean by that, because the guy I'm going to talk about is Ty Chandler, currently going off the board as the running back 44. He's going to be the backup for Aaron Jones. That is very clear. But when you're looking for like a fifth or sixth running back on your team in drafts, I think it's always a good idea to just bet on the young, high upside, athletic running backs. Because when Alexander Mattison was just putrid last season, in weeks 15 to 18, when they kept Ty Chandler on the field because they were quite literally forced to keep him on the field with how good he was playing, he was significantly better than Alexander Mattison. Chandler was averaging 15.3 touches and nearly 82 total yards per game. At this point in Aaron Jones's career, it's almost certain that he's going to miss a handful of games. I mean, he missed 6 last year, and he has only played one fully healthy season in his career. The big problem with Ty Chandler is that he's putrid at pass blocking. Okay, that is not his forte. But what I'm hoping is that coming into year 2, he's had all offseason to learn and grow in that category. He's going to have all preseason to learn and grow in that area of his game. So when Aaron Jones does inevitably miss time this year, you're going to throw in Ty Chandler. And again, we're going to be talking about him as a top 20 running back when he's thrown into the lineup. So for a guy that I can snag as my running back 5 in a handful of my drafts, I absolutely love taking the shot on a guy like Ty Chandler, who might actually get anywhere from 4 to 6, 7 quality starts this year. That's just not something you can find unless if we're talking a potential Rico Dowdle at this point in the draft.
Yeah, I do agree. I think the thing I like too about Ty Chandler is where everything stands, right? You know that he's going to have a role in this offense, but he's the backup. Whereas, kind of these other guys, you're like, especially Dowdle, like you're sitting there like, can I start him this week? Can I not? Like Chandler, you're going to kind of know, okay, I can play him this week. I can't. So I do like that. And like you said, it's just the upside that you have. He's better than just a handcuff. I think that's kind of the category he's falling in. And I think too, when we're talking about sleepers, we're not talking about late round guys who are going to be the top 15 guy who's going to win you your league. That's not Chandler. But like you said, he's got a role. And if he needs any standalone, if he gets any standalone time, he's going to benefit tremendously. And he's a guy that you're for sure going to feel confident putting in your lineup.
Even when Kevin O'Connell first took over and it was Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison in the backfield, Mattison was still getting touches. Granted, it wasn't a whole lot, but Mattison found the end zone a couple times. And that's the beauty with Ty Chandler, is that KOC has kind of played his hand a little bit, that it's not entirely going to go to one guy. He tried to do that last year with Alexander Mattison, and maybe it's just a debate on just the talent of the running back. Try to do it with
a bad running back.
Right.
Like that's what we come back to.
Exactly. And I think Aaron Jones, while an upgrade, again, it's not the most sure thing to bank on because, like you said, he's had injury problems. And quite honestly, like the only thing that he provides that Ty Chandler doesn't is just pass protection. I think both of them are pretty similar in terms of just what they provide a team, right? One has just done it for longer and been more efficient than the other. That's all to say that, like, Ty Chandler, again, another guy that's got some standalone value. And that if Aaron Jones goes down, his upside just, it's to the moon then, because again, we've seen that this offense would rely on him when it is just Ty Chandler.
All right, before we move on to our wide receiver sleepers, you can listen to our podcast in a variety of ways. The first way, and probably the most entertaining way, is over on YouTube, youtube.com/@thefantasyfootballfellas. We are also doing our draft guide giveaway over there as well. You might be watching there already. You just have to subscribe and comment down below. We're choosing one lucky winner from each video for the rest of the summer. Again, youtube.com/@ the fantasy football fellas. The second way, obviously, is to listen on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast from. You can subscribe there. We're grateful for all your support wherever you may be listening in, but wanted to make sure if you're over on the podcast feed and you're like, I keep talking about YouTube, this video, you can go subscribe. But also, if you're like, I'm in the car and I want to pull up a YouTube video, you can head on over to your podcast feed. We are there for you as well. Let's dive into these wide receiver sleepers now, fellas. We're going the same order, Cameron. We'll have you talk about your sleeper wide receiver first. I had a crush on this player last year. I'm officially done with this player now, but you're still in.
I am still in, and I'm just a sucker for pain, I guess. It's Jeudy. He's going as a wide receiver 56. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised to hear 2 years ago, this guy was the wide receiver 22 in 2022. He was, which is just an insane, stat to think about. He's going as the wide receiver 55 right now, and 2 years ago he's the wide receiver 22. The thing that's always been, clear about Jeudy is he's a good route runner, right? I mean, that's always been clear. Wide receiver 14 in target separation last season. He was 17th in unrealized air yards, which, if you don't know what that means, it's the amount of yards that were thrown his way that didn't convert into a catch. So he was 17th, which means he had a lot of passes thrown his way. He had a lot of, deeper passes thrown his way that him and Russ just didn't end up connecting on. There's different parts of that. Jeudy has always had drop problems. That's been something that's been a little pretty clear. Him and Russ just didn't seem to be on the same page. Him and Sean Payton didn't seem to be on the same page last year. There was a reason he was gone pretty quickly after this season. And then he goes to Cleveland and he gets a 3-year, $52.5 million contract. For me, what that tells me is he's the clear wide receiver 2, right? It's not, is Elijah Moore going to take snaps from him? It is Jeudy, and Jeudy does play a little bit more in the slot. So he'll slide there a little bit more, but he also does play on the outside. And so I think Jeudy is going to have a pretty firm role in this team. Elijah Moore saw 104 targets last season. Which was 30th in the NFL, which I was shocked by too. Like, that was a stat. I was like, really? Elijah Moore was top 30 in targets last year? But I guess so. He's probably going to be the third option on this team behind Njoku and Cooper, but I feel like he's got a good enough role. And for me, we've just seen so many flashes of upside with Jeudy that I'm going to give him one more chance here. And at the wide receiver 56 or 55, it just feels free to do so. I mean, maybe not free, but it feels extremely cheap to do so. So I've been giving him chances constantly. I think he's my third highest drafted player over on Underdog right now.
Yeah, and over on Underdog, there are quite literally thousands upon thousands of people doing fantasy football drafts right now because there are large chunks of money to be won. People who are scooping up potential value sleepers early before they start rising up board. So if you want a chance at potentially winning a share of $20 million are giving away this summer through their contests, underdogfantasy.com, promo code fellas, you'll get deposit match up to $250, 50% that is, and then you'll also get a free square for the pick'em lobby and our draft guide for free. So if you want to get a free draft guide that way as well, you can use our promo code fellas over on Underdog. But I think the thing with Jeudy that I'm wrestling with is you've got Amari Cooper there, who we all like.
Mm-hmm.
You got David Njoku there, who I think Kevin Stefanski at this point has to figure out a way to get the ball to, as he did at the tail end of last season.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Elijah Moore kind of suffer at the hands of that. I'm not optimistic Deshaun Watson is going to be competent enough this year to support 3 potentially viable wide receivers. Like, when I'm thinking about Jeudy as the wide receiver 55, I think he might finish as like the wide receiver 45 this year. And is that enough upside for me to take a shot on him at wide receiver 55?
Yeah.
But as you said, there could be opportunity there with Elijah Moore drawing 100 plus targets last year. Ty, you're a guy who was also in on Jerry Jeudy last year. How are you trying to reconcile your differences after last year?
I'm not.
Amen, brother. Amen.
It's me. No, but the thing that gives me some kind of hope for Jerry Jeudy, that I'm not like pounding the table for Jerry Jeudy at this price tag, but the fact is that Cleveland last year, they ran 3 wide receiver sets at nearly a top 10 rate in the league. So yes, Njoku's on the field. Yes, Cooper's on the field. I don't think Elijah Moore is going to see 100 targets again with Jerry Jeudy now in town. I don't think David Njoku is going to see, 128 targets, 123 targets. Yes, Njoku could push 100. But I think there's still going to be decent work available for Jerry Jeudy. And again, for a guy that has been always the route runner, Amari Cooper has just been utilized downfield in this Kevin Stefanski offense. I think there's room for Jeudy to, I'll say, operate. And again, I'm not pounding the table for the guy, but there's very few players that are going to be in a good offense like Jeudy is, who are still going to be arguably a top 3 option in their offense, that are going that late in draft. So I think he's a fine depth piece. If you can let go of the last 3 years in Denver.
Yeah. He's hard because he's a guy that we've been told is gonna like reach this next echelon of players, and he just has not. And so finally people are just like, okay, nope, he's done. Right. And that's how I feel, is that we've dropped him too far. That's why I consider him a sleeper.
Which I mean, at this price, I think you can absolutely consider him a sleeper after round 10. It's not like Jeudy didn't first round draft pick, right? Like we have to come back to that. He was the best route runner. I had him down for in the class when he came out of college, but obviously things have not panned out in his career, and Cleveland is kind of the last dance, if you will, for Jerry Jeudy. Because if it isn't this year, he's officially in the furnace. Nobody's thinking about him after this year. Ty, I'll have you jump in here. Who is your wide receiver candidate? You're going someone a little bit more fresh in the league.
Yeah, it's a rookie wide receiver, actually.
Very fresh.
And I never thought there would be a day that I'd be talking about a Patriots wide receiver after the days of Tom Brady, but here we are. It's Jalen Polk. And I don't think a lot of people are expecting much from this New England offense, which is fair. But it's a wide open receiver room in New England. Okay. Yes, Jalen Polk is there. You've got Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, Javon Baker, Juju Smith-Schuster, KJ Osborne. It's a lot of again, I don't play football, so I don't really want to be too harsh on the guys, but there's no standout guy in that wide receiver room. Okay. But for the player that Jalen Polk is, who is kind of the do-it-all kind of wide receiver that is going to go over the middle of the field, who is going to stay on the field just because he's versatile, that he can play outside and inside. He run blocks. And again, you don't get any points in that in fantasy football, but that matters in the NFL. I think there's a way for Jalen Polk to get on the field early in New England and then have the opportunity to be the second half of the year, rookie wide receiver breakout that we've seen the past 2 years. We saw it with Amon-Ra St. Brown. We saw it with Rashee Rice last year. Honestly, I don't know why it can't be Jalen Polk. Again, I feel like the situation is very advantageous for him, for a guy that is going to build chemistry right away with his quarterbacks, because again, he is a do-it-all kind of guy. And I put a lot of value in the evaluation that Matt Harmon does over on Reception Perception. Go check out his work. It's phenomenal stuff. He's like, don't make me actually, I'm not taking this comparison seriously when I say this, but he reminds me of Puka Nacua. Not saying he is going to be Puka Nacua, but they are 2 wide receivers who just do it all. And they are slightly better than you think they are, who are going to win downfield, can win in the short and intermediate parts of the field. Again, a quarterback's best friend, no matter if it's Jacoby Brissett, who we've seen actually can play decent ball a little bit and can help support some wide receiver play in production, or if it's Drake May, right? I get it's New England. No one likes to bet on this New England offense, but at the wide receiver 71, like that's a very, very small price to pay for a guy that can emerge as the one in that offense and crack at least the top 50.
The thing I like about Jalen Polk as a sleeper, a lot of people are going to say, well, Demario Douglas, is going to be the guy who returns on value here. The problem with Pop Douglas is that I just don't think the same upside is there that Jalen Polk has. Even like, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I don't even know if a guy like Pop Douglas has the same upside as my guy Javon Baker.
Bring your popcorn. I make people in wheelchairs stand up.
I talk to him so much in best ball on our streams that I'm like, if I don't have a drop for him soon, I need it. But this is what I like about Jalen Polk is that I think if you're going to choose one wide receiver in this room, he has the most upside to be the wide receiver one for this team. Sifting through this wide receiver room, Cameron.
Yeah, it's this kind of feels like the budget Green Bay Packers in a way of we just don't know who the number one's
ultra
going to be.
Walmart.
Yeah, the ultra like Kmart, right? I mean, it is to some extent. I see a world. I think it's, for me, it feels pretty clear that Jalen Polk could easily be the wide receiver one in this offense. It's just the question is then, what does that actually mean? Like, does that mean anything for fantasy football if you're the wide receiver one of the New England Patriots? It might not, but if Drake May comes out and is legit, I mean, there was a lot of teams that like Drake May. So I think that bodes a little bit better for him. He's definitely going to be a guy who's going to kind of, air it out, make some, errant passes, especially his rookie season. But that's not always the worst thing for a fantasy wide receiver when you got a quarterback who's not afraid to sling it. And so do I think he has quite that same upside as like an Amon-Ra St. Brown? No, but do I think you're right in your thinking, Ty, of that later breakout where he kind of comes up and all of a sudden he's fantasy relevant, right? I'm not saying he's going to come win. I don't think he's going to go win your league that second half of the year, but I think all of a sudden that second half of the year, you're going, hey, Jalen Polk's a nice little piece that I can put in and get, 10 to 12 points here and there. He's a good flex start that I can kind of, rely on second half of the season.
A wide receiver 71. I think that is a risk.
I mean, that's free.
It's free, right? Again, 12th round guy. If you want to hold on to a guy in the 12th round of your draft, final round of your draft, past week 1, 2 for the waiver wire guys like Jalen Polk, I think is going to be a guy who potentially could get dropped quickly if teams do draft him early, and then you can scoop him up later when he does start to pan out. I'll talk about one more wide receiver before we take a quick break here, fellas. I went back and forth on 4 different wide receivers for this episode, and I can't quit Jahan Dotson, man. I just can't. I tried putting in Darnell Mooney, and I literally vomited in my mouth a little bit. I'm like, I can't believe we're going to talk about Darnell Mooney. There's no way I can talk about Darnell Mooney as the 4th option in the Atlanta Falcons offense. I do think there's a unique role for him there, but boy, I'd have to do a lot of convincing. I thought about Rashid Shaheed and all the pre-snap motion that the Saints will have in place this year. But I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, Rashid Shaheed, what's his upside, though? With Derek Carr at quarterback, like the wide receiver 35 at best. I want to think about a guy who's going after the 10th round, who I think at some point during the season could be a consistent wide receiver 3 on your fantasy football team. And I do think that player could be Jahan Dotson still. I'm willing to throw last year out. I really am. I've gone back and forth of like, is that fair? Is that not? Because there's typically these second-year check marks we like to see rookies hit, and Jahan Dotson met almost like 0 of them. But this offense last year was disastrous under Eric Bieniemy, and Sam Howell showed that, yeah, despite being able to sling the rock around the yard because he's being told to, I mean, the guy's going to be a career backup at best. That's where Sam Howell is at. There's no synergy with this team. The disconnect was so obvious between Sam Howell and all these wide receivers, and it was just painful after Jahan Dotson's rookie season, right? But now you bring in Cliff Kingsbury, who has a track record of producing high-volume, pass-happy offenses in the league. You get Curtis Samuel. He moves on to Buffalo as well. He frees up just over 90 targets on this team. I think like I'm just labeling Jahan Dotson as this prime post-hype sleeper, similar to Nico Collins after his second year, right? Where it was like, all right, Nico, this is his chance to take a leap year 2. We expected that for Dotson. He didn't pull through. I think this offense or this team made enough moves to hopefully spark some sort of goodness, some sort of production in this offense this year, especially when you look at the depth chart behind Jahan Dotson for the wide receiver 2 role. If you're that scared of Luke McCaffrey, I hate to tell you, Jahan Dotson's just the better player.
Yeah, I mean, the only worry is that the Brandon Ayuk rumors come true and he ends up there.
Right. That could foil this whole thing. And
Yep.
that was one of the reasons why I almost didn't do Jahan Dotson. But then I didn't want that to be the reason. And then Ayuk doesn't get traded. And then it's like, oh, Jahan Dotson, here we go. Top 35 wide receiver this year.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. But like you said, I mean, he looked so good that first year, right? I mean, we all three of us were like, we're all in on Jahan Dotson, and last year was so disappointing. I said Jerry Jeudy is my third highest drafted wide receiver. Jahan Dotson is my second highest drafted wide receiver. And a lot of it just has to do, with ADP. He's fallen this far,
Right.
but he is the clear second option in this passing attack. And if they can kind of get him, use him the way that he actually should be used in this offense, I think that opens up a lot. Jaden Daniels last season, I mean, he showed in college he likes to throw the rock, right? He's a rushing quarterback. Boy, he can sling that thing. They scored a lot of touchdowns, threw for a lot of yards. So I think there's definitely some great upside for Jahan Dotson this season, and I really, really like Dotson at ADP.
The thing with Dotson for me is, again, where he goes in drafts, how many other wide receivers have a path to seeing 90+ targets?
Quite literally almost nobody in that range.
Yeah. Like I could give you 2 names and that's it, right? That is, again, it's not an exciting offense. So people are just going to overlook Jahan Dotson, but keep letting them overlook Jahan Dotson because we're telling you it doesn't matter how bad the offense is. If you're going to give volume, you're going to give volume, and that's production in fantasy football. And then Jahan Dotson is that prime candidate in that, like, literally, according to the Draft Sharks ADP PPR consensus rankings, got that one right this time. Jahan Dotson's going in that like round 12, round 13 turn. You're getting 90+ targets that late in your drafts. That's a very, very easy pick for all three of us.
Jahan Dotson sucks this year. Guess what? He's probably the first wide receiver off your team to make room for whoever the Puka Nacua, the Kyron Williams, the Devon Achane, the Tank Dell is this year, and you're just going to replace him for more upside anyway. So at cost for what upside he brings you, I'm perfectly fine taking him there. Wide receiver 63 again, last round in my draft kind of pick. Let's take a quick break, fellas. We'll be back with our quarterback and tight end sleepers afterwards. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, where it is best ball summer. There are 5 core best ball tournaments to play in with over $20 million up for grabs this summer. You can even take a crack at winning the top prize of $1.5 million in their infamous Best Ball Mania 5 contest. To enter, head to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app and use the code FELLAS to get a first deposit bonus up to $250 and our 2024 draft guide for free. Again, head to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app and use code FELLAS to sign up. Must be 18 plus and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit npcgambling.org. Alrighty, we are back and we are going to continue on with our quarterback and tight end sleepers here. The thing with our quarterback sleepers here is we recognize you're not going to be walking out of too many of your drafts with 2 quarterbacks in single quarterback leagues. However, if you are in a super flex league, if you are playing over on Underdog Fantasy, these are players we absolutely love after round 10 in your fantasy drafts. And frankly, Cameron, the guy you're talking about, I am shocked he's going after round 10 right now. This is like a fall from grace that I'm not entirely sure is precedented.
Yeah, it's Trevor Lawrence. And if we're being honest, if you were like me last year, you were very disappointed in Trevor Lawrence. But what I will say is, for as bad of a season as it was, it really wasn't that bad from a fantasy football perspective, right? I mean, he's shown back-to-back seasons with 4,000 passing yards. He's had at least 290 rushing yards each year of his career, and he scored 25 total touchdowns last year. Right, that's his baseline right now. Is 4,000 passing yards, 300 rushing yards, and 25 total touchdowns. He's currently going as a quarterback 17, despite only having 1 less point per game last year than Stroud, only 0.7 points per game less than Mahomes, only 0.4 less per games than Goff, and he outscored Tua by a full point and outscored Baker in points per game last year, which is crazy because Tua had 4,600 yards and 29 touchdowns, and you felt like Tua had a pretty decent season. But yet, Trevor Lawrence is outscoring him by a point per game, and you felt like Trevor Lawrence had an awful year. Now, obviously loses Calvin Ridley. I'm a believer in Brian Thomas. I don't think it's going to be a one-for-one replacement right away, but getting a healthy Christian Kirk is huge, right? Because we watched that offense 2 years ago, and that was their entire offense, was RPO to Christian Kirk pretty much the entire time. And that's why Christian Kirk, when Lucas said best kept secret in the NFL or in fantasy football is Christian Kirk, that's why he ended up being the best kept secret, was because it was just RPO nation with Christian Kirk. Well, now Christian Kirk's going to be healthy. You'll have hopefully Gabe Davis will be back healthy just to help be that Zay Jones replacement, and then you got Brian Thomas, who has got tremendous upside on the outside. So I think for me, what I'm trying to say is this dude finished as the quarterback 14 in points per game last year, and what we all thought was an abysmal year. And yet he goes as the quarterback 17. The pendulum has just swung too far. I think Justin Herbert kind of feels that same way, except Justin Herbert's not on a team that's going to look to pass the ball. He's not on a team that has, two very good weapons and, Gabe Davis. And so I'm sorry, Gabe.
Oh man.
What I was trying to say, he's a good wide receiver. He's going to help his fantasy value. I just don't quite put him on the Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas tier. So that was what I was trying to get. I wasn't trying to dig right there, but yeah, I really like Trevor Lawrence for a bounce back season this year. And I think even if he doesn't, he's returning on ADP.
First and foremost, thank you for the Christian Kirk shots there. I will forever victory lap that, pat myself on the back for that take. That was a pick not a lot of people liked. I got clowned for that plenty, and wouldn't you know, absolutely smashed ADP. The other point I think I'm going to make about Trevor Lawrence is there is sneaky rushing upside here. This is a guy who, in 2 of his first 3 years in the league, has had at least 70 rushing attempts. He only played 16 games last year, so he would have been on pace, tack on another 4 rushing attempts there. 73, 62, 70, 4 rushing touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns the last 2 years. There is sneaky rushing upside here with Trevor Lawrence. So sure, can he make strides in the passing game? This offense needs to change first and foremost. I don't think we can keep running it back year after year after year. This is just kind of the Doug Peterson trend that we saw in Philadelphia, right? They smashed the first year, second year, it's like, okay, all right, not as great. Third year is like, oh my gosh, Doug Peterson, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. And then finally Doug Peterson got run out of town. So I'm worried we're going to continue seeing this trajectory. And I'm not trying to prescribe Philadelphia to Jacksonville when Doug Peterson was there, but I do think we need to see some improvements in whatever the heck is happening in the Jacksonville organization to make sure Trevor Lawrence is still successful. But if we're talking from a purely fantasy perspective, I think you're right. I think this is the floor for Trevor Lawrence at quarterback 17. I don't think he finishes any lower than this year.
No.
For me, you kind of touched on it, Cam. It feels like the pendulum is just swung too far and we're overcorrecting a little bit with Trevor Lawrence. And it's almost kind of like the opposite then for a guy like CJ Stroud. And like, we know that like there's plenty of arguments to say that like CJ Stroud could be a top 5 guy. That's where he's going in drafts right now, just because again, it's the Houston offense. But like with quarterbacks, you need to pay attention to, again, the pendulum swings, right? Brock Purdy is going as a top 12 guy. Yes, he was the quarterback 6 last year on a hyper efficient offense, right? Like we need to like, that's at least what you need to pay attention to. Once you get outside of like the top 8 or 9 quarterbacks, there are guys that are going too late because we are again overcorrecting. There are guys going too early that we're projecting that again that haven't proved it exactly just yet. So for a guy like Trevor Lawrence, again, with sneaky upside, and for the fact that Trevor Lawrence in his 2 years with Doug Peterson has been top 10 in air yards They air it out in that offense. And last year, he was top 5 in drop passes. That didn't help him out at all. And so, yes, you let Calvin Ridley walk. That's a loss. But a guy like Gabe Davis, who is a downfield guy, you draft Brian Thomas Jr., who's a downfield guy, they are loading up for big plays. And honestly, like, why can't Trevor Lawrence like support that? I think he can. I think we all can admit he's got the talent to do that. Christian Kirk, then Evan Ingram underneath. Like, I feel like this situation for Trevor Lawrence is much better than it was last year. And that feels weird to say, but you look at the personnel, it fits right into Trevor Lawrence's game.
Yeah, and I didn't want to make my comment come across as I don't see them making these changes, but like something needs to change, and it needs to hit this year. And they're making strides towards making those changes. We just need to see it actually pan out. But regardless, whether it does or not, it feels like quarterback 17 is the floor here for Trevor Lawrence. Ty, I really like the quarterback sleeper you're going to be talking about here, because I do think we're after a very successful 2022 campaign. I think we're going to get a bounce back this year from his 2023 season.
We're discounting the Seahawks offense right now. Geno Smith, for his quarterback 24 price tag that you're paying for him, is one of the, I'll say it like that's one of my favorite candidates to absolutely smash his ADP this late in drafts. I know last year was abysmal. There is a new change though in the Seattle offense. I feel like we're gonna keep talking about this change in Seattle. I've been on record saying that like it's a college offensive coordinator. I don't know how much I trust it, but it feels like they got the right college offensive coordinator to like help bring this offense back to, being one of the better units in the league, right? Where it was just in 2022 where Geno Smith was a quarterback 5. He was 5th in deep ball completion percentage. He was top 10 in air yards, deep ball attempts, true completion percentage. And Ryan Grubb, who's now the offensive coordinator last year in Washington, they were 8th in pass rate, 4th in deep pass rate. That plays right into Geno Smith's game. You've got a guy like DK Metcalf. You got JSN, who I think all three of us are kind of like, you know what? This could be the year he overtakes Tyler Lockett, becomes that wide receiver 2. Tyler Lockett won't go away entirely either. Like, there is a world where Geno Smith can support all three of these wide receivers, even with the run game that they could have. Geno Smith is then pushing top 15, right? And for if you miss out on some of these quarterbacks in these middle rounds, I think it's perfectly okay to sit on Geno Smith. And again, for his price tag, if he doesn't hit and someone does on waivers, you can let him go. But I have enough confidence in Geno Smith to correct what happened last year. And I also want to say this too. It wasn't all Geno Smith's fault last year for their lack of success on offense. Their offensive line was the 5th worst graded pass blocking offensive line per PFF. There's a reason why they had no success in the passing game. So with the schematic change, with the coaching change, I think we could see a rebound in this Seattle offense. Similar to Trevor Lawrence, the pendulum has just swung a little too far. I think we've forgotten how good Geno Smith was in 2022, and we're back on this train of like, well, Geno Smith is a career backup, and now he's going too late in drafts. And I love his ADP. He's a sleeper that you should take a shot on, because I think he can best this quarterback 24 tag.
Yeah, you mentioned number 1 true completion percentage, also number 1 in the league in completion percentage over expected during his time with the Seahawks as well. There's not much I can add because I am so bullish on the Seahawks offense this year. What are you going to chime in with, Cameron?
I just feel like the biggest winner of Ryan Grubb coming over has to be Geno Smith, right? We're kind of talking about, how is JSN and Lockett and Metcalf going to, work? Well, how it's going to work is they're going to throw the ball more, right? And that's only going to help out Geno. So I think that's huge. I think obviously it gives him that upside to go hit 30 touchdowns again. And if you hit 30 touchdowns and play all 17 games, you're probably going to be a top 10 quarterback in fantasy football. So I got to say I'm in on Geno. My rankings don't always necessarily reflect it. But I think that he is a good quarterback too, right? I think he maybe could find his way up into that fringe quarterback 1. But like you said, I mean, we're talking about a guy going as a quarterback 24, a guy you don't even have to draft, a guy you can wait and pick up because week 3, because he's still going to be out there if your quarterback's hurt. So yeah, Geno Smith for sure. I mean, he could be the last pick of your draft, and I really like him as a backup on your team.
Yeah, and especially for those 2 quarterback leagues, the guy who you don't have to over prioritize and jump on right away if you want to focus on building out your roster and then wait for, a Geno Smith who might be the last guy taken. In a 2 quarterback super flex league, in a 12-man league. Love the price tag on Geno Smith there. I really like the price tag on my quarterback sleeper as well. Because Matthew Stafford goes as the quarterback 19 right now. It makes sense that I'm going to talk about my doppelganger on our own show after getting we see all the comments, right? Like all the comments on our shirts was like, is this Matthew Stafford? Like, wow, Matthew Stafford doing TikTok in the off season, right? Like we see you all out there. I laugh every time one of those comes through. But it makes sense that I talk about him on this episode because I believe he might actually be the biggest quarterback sleeper. And I'll kind of get into why. I typically like my quarterbacks to have rushing upside. But it's really undeniable how good this Los Angeles Rams offense was with all of their weapons on the field last year, and I believe will be in 2024. When this offense did have all of Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Kyron, etc. on the field from weeks 12 to 17 last year, Stafford was a quarterback 6. He was averaging nearly 21 fantasy points per game. We know Sean McVay is still going to run a crap ton of 11-man personnel. So you're going to have Puka, Cooper Kupp, Kyron, Demarcus Robinson, Colby Parkinson. You're going to have all of these weapons out on the field at Matthew Stafford's disposal. I really do think this offense could be as scary as their 2021 Super Bowl run. Amina Kimes said it. We brought it up on our mock draft episode. Like, she thinks this Rams offense was the second best offense in the league when they had all their weapons out on the field last year. And I will take any quarterback with Matthew Stafford's savvy, his experience under the offense of Sean McVay. I just think when he has all of his weapons healthy this year, it is a whole different ballgame for this Rams offense. There's not going to be stacked boxes coming to get Matthew Stafford. They're going to have to respect the pass. They're going to be able to set up efficient runs because that's just what Sean McVay's offense does. It breeds success for quarterbacks, and Matthew Stafford at quarterback 19. I mean, there's top 12 upside here for Matthew Stafford. I really do believe that.
Yeah, as long as he hasn't lost it, right? I mean, he's going to be in an offense that's maybe probably better than that offense they brought to the Super. I mean, maybe offensive line play might not be quite as good,
right?
But as far as like talent on the field, he probably has better weapons than a Super Bowl season. So it's like, and he was quarterback 5 that year. Yeah. I'm not saying he throws for 40 touchdowns again or anything, but that is the upside, right? And that's kind of what I said during the mock draft episode too. Is I think the range of outcomes for this offense is the same as the Houston Texans. So I think whatever you think CJ Stroud can hit, I think Matthew Stafford can hit that same thing in fantasy football. I'm not saying he's going to. I think it's more likely Stroud does, but I do think that's the range of outcomes for Matthew Stafford.
The beauty of all 3 of these quarterbacks that we talked about, they can all be your second quarterback on your team. If you were to take like a Jared Goff, a Tua, a Brock Purdy, someone that you're not sure if you can rely on week in, week out, but you've got, again, a Geno, a Stafford, and a Trevor Lawrence that if they hit, they're your guy then the rest of the year. Like you don't necessarily pay a penalty for how late these guys are going and for how good their offenses could be, how good they are as talents. That would be my ideal strategy, at least. If you're going to go 2 quarterbacks, it's your second quarterback has to be one of these 3 guys.
Let's bring it home here, fellas. Let's each talk about a tight end. I don't want to dive super deep into chatting all these tight ends, but I'm going to at least let us each make a case, and I'll have at least one of us chime in with a few additional thoughts and move on. But Cameron, we'll have you start the tight end sleeper session here. I'm not going to lie, yours is my least favorite out of the 3 of ours, but I'm also biased because one of them is my own. I'll say maybe I like Tyler's more than yours, but I'm really curious to hear the case you're going to make for this guy.
Yeah, it's Tyler Conklin. He has had 87 targets each of the last 3 years with some bad quarterback play. And this is just an offense. They pick up Malachi Corley. They got Mike Williams. But do either of them really excite you as a target this season? Right, Mike Williams coming off the ACL tear.
It's a dagger for you for Mike Williams. Used to be the biggest Mike Williams.
I love Mike Williams. I want Mike Williams to be awesome this season. I really, really do. But I'm also going to be realistic, right? Going to a new team, coming off an ACL. I mean, especially the style that he plays of jump up, high point the ball, crash to the ground. That's not a great recipe for success coming off an ACL injury. So, and Tyler Conklin last season, I mean, he had 87 targets, 61 receptions for 621 yards. He just didn't score a touchdown. I know Aaron Rodgers has never been like this huge tight end guy, but I do think at the same time, I mean, we've seen Robert Tonyan pop off for, a ton of touchdowns in the season. We've seen that kind of thing happen. For a guy going as a tight end 20, I don't understand. I don't know why, if Conklin's already been getting consistent targets, why adding Aaron Rodgers would, continue to keep him down the board. I just think Aaron Rodgers is enough of an upgrade to keep him in that top 12 tight end range, which is, again, not exactly like, oh, wow, he's a top 12 tight end. It doesn't mean a lot, but it's still, I think he's going to be relevant enough that you're going to be able to play him this season.
You agree with that last comment, Ty, that he'll be relevant enough for you to play him this season?
I don't know. I know that Cam's strategy in drafts is always to punt on tight end.
Always.
We've seen him go Gerald Everett the past 3 seasons, it feels like.
Fanciest tight end in the league, according to Pete Carroll.
Hey, that comment kept me going for so long.
So long. It fed generations. I think with Conklin, like, there is an opportunity, that some of these tight ends don't necessarily have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how likely it is that, like, that opportunity actually becomes a reality. But again, being attached to Aaron Rodgers in an offense that we are all expecting to be much better than it was last year, to be in the top half of the league in efficiency and scoring, that has to benefit Conklin at some point, right? So again, it's not someone that you're going to get super excited about. And I'm trying not to go down like the better and best ball path, because that's just disrespectful.
But you're going to.
You know what? Maybe I'll say it like this. Maybe I'll say it like this.
Own it. That's your bit. You have to own it. Why are you shying away from the bit?
No, because it's disrespectful. I think Tyler Conklin could be a very, very nice kind of like. Okay, ladies and gentlemen.
That's back-to-back episodes. Come on.
I know. I need to break the streak. So Tyler Conklin is better in best ball. Kidding.
Yes.
Bully him into it.
We did
it. Bully me into it. No, but I think like Tyler Conklin can be a very sneaky like waiver wire ad of the week if your tight end goes down. We've seen tight ends pick up injuries that keep them out for a long period of time. I feel like if Conklin goes undrafted, that's got to be like the number one option to pick up then, because again, his opportunity is not the same for other tight ends then that are going to go undrafted.
Yeah, I like him as a potential streamable option this year. I think he's one to keep on your radar throughout the season. Ty, I'll kick it over to you. Go through your tight end sleeper here. He's attached to my sleeper quarterback. He's a guy I'm taking in almost every single round or every single 18th round of best ball drafts that I'm in.
Who am I kidding? It's Colby Parkinson. It's really just getting a piece of this Rams offense, right? I'm a big fan of DeMarcus Robinson in best ball drafts because he is going so late, and you know that he is the wide receiver 3 in that offense for a team that utilizes 3 wide receiver sets a lot. For Colby Parkinson, though, the Rams didn't need to go out and fork as much money as they did to Colby Parkinson. And yes, they have Tyler Higbee, but let's not forget Tyler Higbee picked up a pretty serious knee injury in their playoff game against Detroit. So there's a chance that Tyler Higbee can miss half the season, maybe. And in the way that this Rams offense runs, Sean McVay does not really like to take guys out. That is just a that's just like a game that's how you keep defenses guessing because you're not going to like signal, right? You're going to bring in like the backup running back. And so you're like, oh, it's usually going to be a pass because they don't like the backup running back. Like he doesn't like to do that. So with Tyler Higbee missing time, the utilization of 3 wide receiver sets, leaving a tight end on the field, Colby Parkinson's going to be on the field a ton. And let's not forget, Tyler Higbee has finished as a top 10 tight end in this Rams offense before. And I'm not wanting to go down the 1-for-1 path or anything like that, but there's a reason why Sean McVay wanted Colby Parkinson, paid him as much money as they did. And I'm just going to recklessly speculate here. Do you guys remember when the Rams were reportedly in on Brock Bowers during draft time?
Yes. Oh, yes.
I'm not saying that Colby Parkinson is Brock Bowers, but Sean McVay has an idea in his mind for these non-traditional receiving threat, big target wide or tight ends. That was Brock Bowers. The sneaky advantage that he gets with Colby Parkinson, though, he was the 7th highest graded tight end in run blocking per PFF. So he's getting run blocking. He's getting a receiving upside in Colby Parkinson. And Colby Parkinson, he lined up in the slot 23.5% of his snaps last year. Like, wow. That I was surprised by that. I was like,
that's meaningful.
That is.
That's what Sean McVay saw last year and said, I can tap into that. So again, Colby Parkinson is a guy, again, tight end 30, like per that Draft Sharks ADP PPR consensus thing. It's round 20. I doubt your drafts are going to go to round 20. But Colby Parkinson's another one of these sleeper tight ends that if he makes it to waivers, keep an eye on him, because again, it's this Rams offense. And if we're as bullish as we are on this Rams offense, keep an eye on pretty much every single player on that offense.
Colby Parkinson, he's a big dude.
He's
6'7", 265. Yeah. I didn't realize how big he was, which is huge. You get that guy running down the seam in a Sean McVay offense. I mean, I love Colby Parkinson. I mean, you look at what Sean McVay was able to do with Tyler Higbee. Again, you said it, Ty. He went out and got Colby Parkinson after wanting Brock Bowers in the draft, like rip and piece to that dream, because holy crap, Brock Bowers in this Rams offense, like we'd be drafting him in the George Kittle, Kyle Pitts range. So no, I love Colby Parkinson. I'm going to talk about a guy on his former team to wrap us out here. Noah Fant. He's my favorite sleeper tight end this year. It's like him, Colby Parkinson, and Zach Ertz are like my 3 big ones. Noah Fant, though. Colby Parkinson got the bag. Noah Fant also got the bag. 2-year, $21 million extension with the Seahawks after scoring 0 times last year and failing to hit 500 receiving yards in either season with the team. They paid this man 2 years, $21 million. He did nothing to earn that contract. So what that tells me is that this new regime wants to keep Noah Fant around for a specific reason. And there is so much breaking his way right now, right? Because you take out Will Dissly, who is now with the Chargers. Colby Parkinson, who we just talked about, he's now with the Rams. You bring in Ryan Grubb, as we talked about, one of the most pass-happy offenses in all college football the last 2 years. Noah Fant's an athletic dude. I mean, with those 3 around last year, he only played 54.3% of the snaps, which is just an abysmal number. If you're expecting a whiff of fantasy production out of your tight end, I'm just willing to bet on the dude's athletic profile on an offense. I'm just super bullish on this year, especially when a tight end's peak age is right around that 26, 27 age season. And it takes time for these tight ends to break out in the NFL. It's not like Noah Fant could be the first late bloomer here. So again, on an offense, I'm extremely bullish on. I'm going to follow the money here a little bit. I'm going to follow the departure of 2 tight ends that were holding Noah Fant, keeping Noah Fant off the field last year. Like, I'm waiting for that snap percentage to be more, closer to 70, 75 this year, as Ryan Grubb, I'm expecting to run a lot more 11 personnel and keep Noah Fant on the field as a weapon.
Yeah, I mean, tight ends are just so gross. That's what I keep coming back to with all this. It's just like,
take your good one. This is why elite tight end is like
an
undefeated strategy this year. Take your elite one and just forget about it.
And that's kind of, I have been. I mean, you saw it in our mock. I did take Kyle Pitts because it's like, it's just so hard to guess week to week with some of these guys. I think Noah Fant could easily be a guy that has, that he's that plug and play guy throughout the season, that, your tight end's on bye. He's an easy one to throw in. I also think it's going to be nice because you're going to know pretty quickly if Noah Fant's in this offense or not. You're going to know pretty quickly if it's just the 3 wide receivers and no Noah Fant, or if, hey, Fant's going to get 5 or 6 targets a game. Like, I do like that about Fant, that you can make the decision quick and that you can just, move on from that. So that is my thought there on Fant.
Yeah, no.
You don't have. We don't have to spend more time on this. We have to. He's the tight end 26.
Yeah. No, 100%. That's what it comes down to. It's gross. Like, that's why he's a tight end sleeper.
I didn't want to cut you off there, Ty, but I just need to name that. We don't have to add anything. We can just leave it at my case there. Because again, in a normal redraft league, all 3 guys that we're looking at, you're probably looking at them as like either streamable options, or you know what, if they pop off on a given week and it looks like they're going to have a continued role, it might be worth busting into the fab on them.
Noah Fant's one of those guys that, again, you don't pay like a serious enough price to be penalized if he doesn't hit. Like, you have nothing to lose. Like, and we're not sitting here saying like, with your last pick in your draft, you should take a Noah Fant or a Colby Parkinson. If they make it to waivers, that is A-okay. Just keep an eye on them, because you never know.
Well, there you have it. 12 sleepers at every position in fantasy football drafts this year. Thanks for tuning in. You can follow us on the socials. I am at Lucas Wenzel, at Camlaw FFF for Cameron, at Tyler_Plath for Tyler. You can follow our pages as well at FFFellas on Twitter, the FFFellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. Again, remember, make sure you subscribe to the new channel. We're giving away a free draft guide to one person who subscribes and comments on every video until the start of the season. So if you want to get your copy of a free Fantasy Football Fellas draft guide for 2024, enter your chances to win that. Subscribe, comment below. Otherwise, we'll see you all next week. Deuces.
Deuces.